My parents mocked the bottle I brought to my brother's engagement party like I had just performed a slapstick routine in front of the Southern elite. I let them laugh. I let the chuckles linger longer than necessary until every phone in the room went silent. Because the cheap swill they thought I had bought was actually a $15,000 lure, and they had just swallowed the bait that would change ownership of this party by midnight. My name is Madeline Graves. At 34 years old, my existence in Raleigh, North Carolina, was a study in beige. My mornings began with bitter black coffee that burned my tongue just enough to wake me up, and my evenings ended with takeout eaten standing over the kitchen sink. In between lay the gray expanse of my job at Grayline Risk Services. I worked in the records department processing risk assessments for insurance claims. It was stable, quiet, and suffocating. It was exactly the kind of life that convinced my family I had failed. To my parents, I was the daughter who never launched. I wore no makeup to hide the fatigue under my eyes, drove a sedan that was 5 years past its prime, and had no husband or children to parade around at Thanksgiving. I was the dull background noise to my younger brother Trevor. Trevor was the golden boy with the winning smile and the career that people actually understood. I was just Madeline. The vibration of my phone against the laminate desk surface broke my concentration. The screen lit up with a message from Darlene. I never called her mom in my head anymore. Trevor is finally doing it. The text read, "He is proposing to Sloan Whitaker this weekend. Engagement party in Charleston at the Harbor Club. Be there by 6. I stared at the screen. The Harbor Club was old money. It was the kind of place where the air conditioning smelled like magnolias and judgment. A second message popped up immediately after the first, delivering the real instructions. "Do not make this about you." Darlene wrote, "Wear something that fits. And for God's sake, don't bring a cheap gift. We need to make a good impression on the Whitakers." I set the phone down. There it was. I was not being invited as a sister. I was being summoned as a prop. They needed a full set of family members to create the illusion of a perfect, tight-knit clan for social media. I was there to fill a chair and stay out of focus in the background of the photos. My eyes drifted to the corner of my desk where a faded business card sat tucked under a stapler. The name on it was Eleanor Price. She was an advisor, a ghost in the corporate world, and the woman who had pulled me out of the lowest point of my 20s. Eleanor was over 60 now, a woman made of steel wire and impeccable taste. She had taught me about wine. She had taught me that value was rarely what was printed on a price tag. Most importantly, she had taught me how to keep a secret until it was time to weaponize it. I left work exactly at 5. When I got to my apartment, I walked straight to the high shelf in my pantry, past the instant noodles and the stale crackers. I reached all the way to the back. My fingers closed around cool glass. I pulled out the bottle. It was wrapped in a linen cloth to protect it from light. I unwrapped it slowly. The glass was dark, almost black. The label was minimalist, containing only the vintage and the vineyard name in elegant, small script. The wax seal over the cork was intact, a deep crimson that looked like dried blood. I looked at the bottle the way a soldier looks at a loaded rifle. It was a promise I had made to myself years ago. Darlene wanted me to bring a gift that was not cheap. She wanted me to fit in. She wanted me to play the game. "You want a show?" I whispered to the empty room, my thumb tracing the wax seal. "I'll give you a show." I was going to Charleston. I was not going to beg for their affection or to stand awkwardly in the corner while they made jokes at my expense. I was going to finish a cycle of humiliation that had started when I was a child. I packed the bottle into my bag. This time, I was writing the script. The drive to Charleston took 4 hours, which gave me plenty of time to dissect the anatomy of my family. It was a relationship built on polite cruelty. Trevor was the star, the golden retriever who could wreck a car and still be praised for surviving. I was the difficult sister, the killjoy who ruined the mood simply by existing in a room without smiling enough. As the highway markers blurred past, I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, the ghost of 1,000 childhood dinners where I was told to be quiet because the adults were talking about Trevor's potential. My phone rang through the car speakers just as I crossed the state line. The screen read, "Dad." There was no greeting when I answered. "Madeline." Hank's voice was rough, like gravel crunching under tires. "Where are you? I am about 30 minutes out," I said, keeping my eyes on the road. "Good. Listen to me. Your mother is already stressed out of her mind. Do not add to it." He paused, and I could hear the flick of a lighter in the background. "What did you get them? Please tell me you didn't buy some?" "Handmade craft garbage. I brought wine." "Dad." "Wine," he scoffed. "With your salary? Just make sure it looks decent. I don't want the Whitakers thinking we couldn't afford to raise you right. And Madeline, don't do that thing you do." "What thing?" "That thing where you stand in the corner and look like you're judging everyone. Just try to be normal for once." He hung up. He never asked how the drive was. He never asked if I was tired. He only checked to make sure his prop was polished and ready for the stage. 10 miles outside the city, I pulled into the parking lot of a rundown liquor store. The neon sign buzzed with a dying flicker. I walked inside, ignoring the smell of stale beer and cleaning fluid. I did not go to the shelves. I went to the counter and asked the bored teenager for a gift bag. "We only have the brown paper ones," he mumbled. "Or the ones with the little balloons." "The brown paper one," I said. "The cheapest one you have." I paid 50 cents for a bag that looked like it belonged in a dumpster. Back in the car, I slid my $15,000 bottle into the crinkled paper. It looked perfect. It looked like trash. It was exactly what they expected from me, and I wanted to make sure they felt comfortable in their assumptions. By the time I checked into my hotel, the family group chat was exploding. My phone vibrated against the bedside table like an angry hornet. Ding! A photo of Sloane's hand, the diamond ring catching the light. Ding! A photo of Mom in a silver gown that probably cost more than my car. Ding! A photo of Trevor in a bespoke suit, looking like a catalog model. Then came a text from Mom. "Everyone is bringing top-tier gifts. Sloane's uncle sent a case of vintage champagne. Please ensure yours is worthy." I tossed the phone onto the bed. I stood in front of the full-length mirror. I was wearing a simple gray suit. It was severe. It was professional. It was armor. I did not try to soften my features with makeup. I did not try to curl my hair. I just straightened my spine until I felt the tension lock into place. I was not there to be pretty. I was there to be a witness. My phone buzzed one more time, but the notification was different. It was an email. I frowned, picking it up. It was from a sender I did not recognize at first glance. From Harborstone Cellars. Subject auction confirmation. Lot 404. I froze. Harborstone Cellars was a high-end wine broker. I had subscribed to their newsletter years ago on Eleanor's advice, just to keep track of the market. I opened the email. Reminder: the private bidding for the reserve collection begins at 8 o'clock tonight. Location: the Harbor Club. Charleston, VIP wing. My blood ran cold. The Harbor Club. The exact location of the engagement party. I looked at the time. It was 6 o'clock. The auction coincided perfectly with the party. This was not a coincidence. Someone was using Trevor's engagement party as a cover for a major black market transaction. They were hiding a business deal behind the noise of a family celebration. I looked at the brown paper bag sitting on the desk. The bottle inside was rare. It was valuable. And suddenly, I realized it might be more than just a gift. It might be a variable in an equation that no one realized I knew how to solve. I picked up the bag, clutching it against my chest. I walked out of the hotel room and headed toward the elevator. I was stepping onto a stage, but for the first time in my life, I knew that the backstage was dirtier than the performance. The Charleston Harbor Club was a temple of glass and polished brass that jutted out over the water like the prow of a very expensive ship. The air conditioning was set to a temperature that required cashmere. and the lighting was designed to make diamonds fracture into 1,000 tiny rainbows. It was beautiful, but it was the kind of beauty that felt hostile if you did not belong to it. The laughter in the room was loud, yet it lacked warmth. It sounded brittle, like crystal stems snapping. I stood at the entrance, clutching my wrinkled brown paper bag against my chest. I looked like a delivery driver who had gotten lost on the way to the service entrance. Darlene spotted me instantly. She navigated the crowd with the precision of a heat-seeking missile, her silver gown rustling like dry leaves. She stopped in front of me and offered a hug that involved no contact below the shoulders. I felt the stiffness of her hairspray against my cheek. "Madeline," she said, pulling back to inspect me. Her eyes dropped immediately to the paper bag in my hand. Her smile faltered, the corners of her mouth twitching downward. "Oh, you brought... It is a gift," I said, keeping my voice flat. "I see," she said. She looked around quickly to ensure no one of importance had witnessed the bag. "Well, just try to keep it under the table until the presentation. We do not want people to think we are..." She trailed off, but I knew the words she wanted to say. "Cheap. My father." Hank appeared at her elbow. He looked uncomfortable in his tuxedo, his neck bulging slightly against the starch of his collar. He extended a hand to me. It felt limp and moist. He shook my hand, not like a father greeting a daughter, but like a politician greeting a constituent he intended to ignore after the election. "You made it," he said. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Don't make a scene. Madeline, look at these people. This is the big leagues. Do not embarrass us with your moods. I am fine." "Dad," I said, "just smile," he commanded, pulling away. Then came the guests of honor. Trevor and Sloane moved through the room as a single entity. Trevor looked radiant, his smile practiced and winning. Sloane was a vision in white silk, her blonde hair cascading over her shoulders in waves that probably cost $300 to perfect. They stopped in front of me. "Hey, sis," Trevor said. He sounded breezy, but his eyes darted to the guests behind me. Sloane looked at me. Her gaze was not unkind. It was simply indifferent. She looked at me the way a person looks at a piece of furniture that does not match the rest of the decor. She noticed the paper bag, and a flicker of amusement danced in her eyes. "So glad you could come," Sloane said. "Trevor said you don't get out much? I work a lot," I said. A group of Sloane's friends drifted over, cocktails in hand. They were young, beautiful, and terrifyingly bored. "And what do you do?" a woman with emerald earrings asked me. "I work in records," I said. "Risk assessment profiles for corporate insurance." The light died in her eyes instantly. "Oh, how nice." They turned away in unison, their backs forming a wall of silk and velvet. I was dismissed. I was boring. I was safe to ignore. I drifted toward the edge of the room, near a large potted palm. I made myself small. Being invisible was a skill I had perfected over 3 decades. It was painful. But tonight, it was useful. A few feet away, a man in a charcoal suit was speaking in low tones to the club manager. It was Gordon Whitaker, Sloane's father. He was a handsome man in his late 50s, the kind of man who looked like he owned the ground he walked on. I pretended to examine a painting on the wall, but I tuned my ears to his frequency. "The unit is ready," Gordon asked. "Yes, sir," the manager replied. "Temperature controlled." "Just as you requested." "Good," Gordon said, checking his watch. "The shipment is on the dock. The consignment paperwork needs to be clean. I don't want any slip-ups with the inventory numbers." "Understood," the manager said. My heart skipped a beat. Consignment, shipment, inventory. These were not terms used for a simple engagement party. They were terms used for a transaction. The email from Harborstone Cellars burned in my memory. My mother reappeared at my side, her fingers digging into my arm. They are about to start the speeches, she hissed. When they ask for gifts, you bring that bag up, but be quick, and do not make me regret inviting you. I looked at the small stage at the front of the room where Trevor was preparing to propose publicly. Even though the ring had been on Sloane's finger for weeks, it was all a performance. The smiles, the toasts, the love. I looked at Gordon Whitaker, who was now smiling benignly at his future son-in-law, hiding a business deal behind a veil of family celebration. I tightened my grip on the paper bag. Inside was the truth. They thought I was a prop in their play. They did not realize that I was the only one holding the real script. Don't worry, Mom, I said softly. I won't miss my cue. The gift presentation was not a gesture of generosity. It was a public audit of net worth. The master of ceremonies stood by a long table covered in white linen, reading names from cards with the enthusiasm of a game show host. Guests stepped forward, presenting boxes wrapped in silver and gold, receiving polite, rhythmic applause that sounded like rain hitting a tin roof. My mother decided to accelerate my humiliation. She did not wait for the MC to call my name. She gripped my elbow and steered me toward the front of the room during a lull in the procession. Trevor's sister, Madeline, also has a small token to add, Darlene announced to the room. Her tone was apologetic, the sonic equivalent of a shrug. She was managing expectations before I even reached the table. I walked forward. The lights felt incredibly hot against my skin. I placed the wrinkled brown paper bag on the pristine tablecloth. It sat there, ugly and defiant, amidst the towers of glossy boxes and ribboned parcels. A silence fell over the front rows, followed immediately by a sharp, female voice. It was one of Sloane's bridesmaids. Oh my God, she giggled, loud enough for half the room to hear. Is that a sack lunch? Are we going on a picnic? A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. It was not good-natured. It was the sound of a pack identifying the runt. My father, Hank, was standing near the bar with Gordon Whitaker. Instead of defending me, he leaned back and laughed the loudest. He wanted to show them that he was in on the joke, that he was distinct from my failure. Don't mind her, Hank boomed, raising his glass. Madeline is always so excessively simple. She doesn't understand these things. Sloane stepped up to the table. She looked at the bag with a mixture of pity and amusement. She reached in and pulled out the bottle. She held it up by the neck, not supporting the base, treating it like a piece of refuse she had found on the beach. She squinted at the label. It was a minimalist, cream-colored square with elegant, understated typography. No gold foil, no embossed crests. To an uneducated eye, it looked generic. Cute, Sloane said, her voice dripping with condensation. I've never seen this brand. It must be local, or maybe from the budget aisle. The laughter grew louder. I looked at Trevor. He was standing right next to her. This was the brother I had tutored in math. The brother I had driven to soccer practice when our parents were too busy working. He looked at me. Then he looked at Sloane's smiling face, and he made his choice. Trevor chuckled. He shook his head and smiled at the crowd, shrugging his shoulders as if to apologize for his embarrassing sister. Well, Trevor said, it's the thought that counts. Right. Even if the thought was thrifty. That cut deeper than the laughter. I felt my face go cold. A waiter in a white jacket stepped forward, brandishing a corkscrew. He saw an opportunity to keep the party flowing. Shall I open it, Miss Whitaker? The waiter asked. We can pour around for the head table. It might be amusing to taste. He reached for the bottle in Sloane's hand. No, I said. My voice was not loud, but it was clear enough to cut through the giggles. I stepped forward. Do not open that, I said, looking directly at the waiter. That bottle is not for drinking like that. It needs to breathe. It is not table wine. Sloane burst out laughing. Oh, Madeline, stop. You don't have to be protective of it. We aren't going to waste your fancy juice. I am serious, I said, my voice steady. If you open it now, you ruin it. The room erupted. They thought I was being stingy. They thought I was trying to hoard a $20 bottle of wine because I was too poor to share. They laughed at my pettiness. They laughed at my lack of grace. I took a step back, letting the waves of mockery wash over me. I looked at the bottle in Sloane's hand, the wax seal still intact. They were laughing, but they had just accepted the evidence. By taking possession of the bottle, by mocking it, and by keeping it on the table, they had unknowingly signed a contract. Fine, Sloane said, setting the bottle down carelessly next to a stack of silver platters. We will save the special stuff for later. I nodded once, turned on my heel, and walked away. They had no idea that the trap had just snapped shut. I slipped away from the crushing noise of the ballroom and ducked behind a heavy velvet curtain that concealed the service entrance. The air in the corridor was cooler and smelled of industrial dishwasher detergent and stale coffee. This was the circulatory system of the hotel, where servers in stained vests leaned against walls to smoke vape pens and complain about the tips. I walked with my head down, clutching my phone, trying to look like I belonged there. I slowed my pace when I heard voices drifting from an open doorway ahead. It was the staff break room. 2 men in manager suits were speaking in hushed, urgent tones. I pressed my back against the cold concrete wall and listened. Harborstone is coming to check the bottle. In the VIP room behind the kitchen, one man said. His voice was tight with stress. Mr. Whitaker said the inspection has to happen before 10 o'clock. If the rep sees anything wrong, the whole deal is dead. I know. The second man replied. We have the rest of the lot secure. But he is still sweating about the gaps in the inventory. I moved away silently, my heart hammering against my ribs. I pulled out my phone and opened my encrypted messaging app. I found the thread with Eleanor Price. My fingers flew across the screen. Suspect the party is a front for a wine transaction? Whitaker's involved. Harborstone conducting an inspection on site. Why would they do this here? The 3 dots on the screen pulsed, and Eleanor's reply appeared almost instantly. Because a party provides cover. Noise covers whispers. Do not act rashly. But if your bottle is the one I think it is, then they are playing with things they do not understand. Watch the paperwork. I pocketed the phone and moved deeper into the logistics area. I found a staging table cluttered with half-empty water bottles and stacks of paper. Most of it was catering schedules. But one clipboard had slid off the side and was resting on a crate of napkins. It was a printed checklist, marked with red ink. I picked it up. It was not a menu. It was a consignment manifest. My eyes scanned the columns. It was a list of wines, organized by region and vintage. Near the bottom, circled in thick red marker, was a specific entry, Domaine de la Romanée Conti, Lot 404. I froze. I knew that number. I had stared at it for 3 years in my own apartment. The wax seal on the bottle I had just left on the gift table bore the exact same lot code. I looked at the column next to the wine name. Under recipient, it read Gordon Whitaker. Under status, it said deposit cleared 50,000. I pulled out my phone again and snapped a clear photo of the document. The pieces clicked together in my mind with a terrifying clarity. Gordon Whitaker was not just a collector. He was moving a massive shipment, likely swapping fake bottles for real ones or laundering money through high-value assets. But there was a problem with his inventory. He was missing a bottle. He was missing my bottle. The bottle I had brought was not just a gift. It was the missing component of a shipment that had been compromised. They needed a bottle with that specific provenance to legitimize the entire lot before the Harborstone representative arrived. Gordon must have known the bottle existed in the general market, but he had no idea it was currently sitting on his future son-in-law's gift table, wrapped in insults. I heard footsteps approaching from the far end of the hall. I dropped the clipboard back onto the crate and slipped through a side door that led back to the main ballroom. The noise of the party hit me like a physical blow. I smoothed my jacket and stepped back into the light. I scanned the room and saw my mother, Darlene, holding court near the center of the dance floor. She was laughing, a champagne flute in her hand. She spotted me and waved me over, her face flushed with the triumph of being seen. I walked toward her. She draped an arm around my shoulder, pulling me into her circle of wealthy friends. "And here she is," Darlene announced, her voice high and brittle. "My daughter. She also knows how to buy wine. Can you believe it?" The women around her chuckled politely. Darlene beamed at me, but her eyes were cold. It was a smile that looked like a knife wrapped in lipstick. "You are having fun, Mother," I asked. "Oh, stop it," she hissed under her breath, still smiling for the audience. "Just try to look like you are enjoying yourself. Gordon is very happy with how things are going. Don't ruin it." I looked past her shoulder to the gift table. The brown paper bag was still there, ignored and ridiculed. Gordon Whitaker was happy because he thought he was winning. He did not know that the game had changed, and I was the one holding the whistle. Gordon Whitaker intercepted me before I could reach the exit. He moved with the fluid grace of a man who was used to doors opening before he even reached for the handle. He stepped directly into my path, blocking my view of the exit signs, and offered me a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Miss Madeline," Gordon said, his voice smooth as aged scotch. "I hear you have brought a bottle of wine that is quite interesting. I was wondering if I could take a closer look at it." I stopped. I did not step back. I looked him in the eye. "It is on the gift table. Mr. Whitaker," I said. "It is for Trevor and Sloane." "Of course," he said, stepping closer. His cologne smelled of sandalwood and desperation. "But as a collector, I am always curious. I would hate for a valuable vintage to be mishandled by the catering staff. Why don't we go retrieve it together? I can keep it safe in my office." "That will not be necessary," I replied softly. "I think it is safer where everyone can see it." Gordon's smile evaporated. The skin around his eyes tightened. He leaned in, dropping the facade of the benevolent host. "Look," he lowered his voice to a growl. "This is an event for my family. I have business partners here. I do not want any misunderstandings if you are trying to pull some sort of stunt." Before I could answer, a hand clamped down on my upper arm. It was Trevor. He spun me around, his face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and panic. He looked at Gordon apologetically before dragging me a few feet away toward a decorative pillar. "What are you doing?" Trevor hissed. "Are you crazy? Gordon is trying to be nice to you, and you are acting like this. I am just standing here." "Trevor," I said. "No, you are making people stare." Trevor snapped. "Why do you always have to be so difficult? Can't you just blend in for one night? You are making me look bad in front of the Whitakers. Is that what matters?" I asked. "How you look." "Yes," he whispered furiously. "This is my engagement, Madeline, not your therapy session." Suddenly, Darlene was there too. She wedged herself between us, her eyes darting around the room to see who was watching. She looked at me with pure venom. "Give me the bottle," Darlene commanded. "Go get it off the table and give it to me. I will put it in the car. I will not let you sit here and hold it over our heads like some sort of prize. It is a gift." "Mother," I said. "You told me to bring a gift. I told you not to embarrass us," she said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. "You are doing this on purpose. You want to ruin this because you are jealous. You are jealous that Trevor is happy and you are nothing." I looked at them. I looked at my brother, sweating in his expensive suit, desperate to please a man who viewed him as an asset. I looked at my mother, terrified of losing her proximity to wealth. They did not care that I had been mocked. They did not care that Sloane had humiliated me publicly. They only cared that I was disrupting the transaction. Then I saw it. Over Darlene's shoulder, about 10 feet away, Sloane was standing with her phone raised. The camera lens was pointed directly at us. She was not intervening. She was recording. She was waiting for the moment I snapped, the moment I screamed or cried, so she could post it for her followers as evidence of her crazy sister-in-law. A cold calm settled over me. It was the kind of calm Eleanor had taught me to find in the middle of a storm. I pulled my arm free from Trevor's grip. I smoothed the lapel of my jacket. I looked at Gordon, who had moved up behind my mother, his eyes hard and expectant. "If you want the bottle so badly," I said, my voice low but perfectly clear, "you can go get it. But if you plan to open it, or move it, I suggest you call an appraiser first." The effect was instantaneous. Gordon's face went the color of ash. He froze. The threat hung in the air between us, heavy and undeniable. He knew what the word appraiser implied. It implied provenance. It implied a paper trail. It implied that I knew exactly what that bottle was, and more importantly, I knew exactly why he needed it. What did you say?" Gordon stammered. "You heard me," I said. "It is not just wine, Mr. Whitaker, but I think you already know that." I saw the fear flash in his eyes. It was quick, but it was there. And in that moment, the power in the room shifted. They were no longer the judges, and I was no longer the defendant. I was the one holding the gavel. My phone vibrated in my hand, a continuous, insect-like buzzing that signaled a flood of notifications. I lifted the screen. It was not a text message. It was a tag on a social media story. Sloane had posted a photo. It was an artfully composed shot of the gift table. In the center, filtered to look even grubbier than it was, sat my brown paper bag. It was flanked by silver boxes and silk ribbons, making it look like a piece of trash someone had forgotten to throw away. The caption was overlaid in a tasteful, serif font. "Some people love attention more than family. Sad engagement blessed." I tapped on the comments. They were populating in real time. "Is that a lunch sack, OMG? Who invited the help? I would have died. You are a saint for tolerating that." Sloane. In the span of 5 minutes, I had become a local meme. I was the punchline to a joke told by people who wore shoes that cost more than my rent. I felt a strange detachment, like I was watching a car crash in slow motion from the safety of a sidewalk. Suddenly, a hand clamped onto my wrist. It was my father. Hank did not look at me. He simply marched me toward the French doors leading to the terrace. He moved with a violence that he masked as firm guidance, smiling tight-lipped at the guests we passed. Once we were outside, in the humid Charleston night air, he shoved me toward the stone railing. The music from the ballroom was muffled by the glass, but his anger was loud and clear. "What is wrong with you?" Hank spat, his face inches from mine. "Do you have any idea what you look like in there? You look pathetic. I am just standing." "Dad," I said, "you are making us look cheap," he hissed, slamming his hand against the stone rail. "Sloane is posting about it. Her friends are laughing. How could you let them think we raised a girl who brings trash to a black tie event? I brought a gift," I said calmly. "Sloane is the one who chose to mock it online." "Because it looks like garbage," Hank shouted, though he kept his voice to a forceful whisper. "You are embarrassing me. You are embarrassing your brother. Fix it." Before I could answer, the door opened again. Darlene swept out, followed closely by Trevor. My mother looked frantic. Her social mask had slipped, revealing the terrified climber underneath. "Gordon is asking questions," Darlene said, her voice trembling. "He wants to know why you won't let him see the bottle. He thinks you are up to something." She grabbed my shoulders, her nails digging into the fabric of my jacket. "Listen to me, Madeline. If Trevor loses this marriage because of your stunts, do not call me your mother anymore. I mean it. You will be dead to us." I looked at her. I waited for the hurt to come. But it didn't. I just felt cold. I looked past her to Trevor, my baby brother, the one I had protected from bullies, the one I had helped with homework. He was standing there, adjusting his cufflinks, unable to meet my eyes. "Trevor," I asked, "is this what you want?" Trevor sighed. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had already sold his soul and was just waiting for the check to clear. "Just give the bottle to Gordon." "Madeline," Trevor said, his voice flat, "please, why do you have to be like this? You know you don't. You don't fit in here anyway. Just give him what he wants so we can get through the night." There it was, the confirmation. I did not belong. I was an obstacle to their ascent. I took a step back. I pulled out my phone. I opened Sloane's story. I took a screenshot. I opened the comments. Screenshot. I opened the group chat where my mother had told me not to embarrass them. Screenshot. I recorded the time and location. I was not a daughter anymore. I was a risk assessor building a case file. "Okay," I said. "Okay," Darlene asked, blinking. "You will give it to him. I am going back inside." I said, "I will make sure everyone gets exactly what they deserve." I walked past them. I walked past my father, who was wiping sweat from his forehead. I walked past my mother, who looked relieved. I walked past Trevor, who was staring at his shoes. I re-entered the ballroom. The lights were dimming. The band was slowing down. The master of ceremonies was tapping the microphone, calling for attention. They were preparing for the official toast. They wanted a perfect moment. They wanted a viral engagement video. I walked toward the stage. I was going to give them their viral moment, but they had forgotten that when you light a fire for attention, you have to be careful not to stand in the wind. I was done being the fuel. I was about to become the match. The doors to the main ballroom swung open, not with a bang, but with a quiet, confident weight that drew the eye more effectively than a shout. Eleanor Price walked in. She was not wearing a sequined gown or diamonds that caught the strobe lights. She wore a tailored black trouser suit and a silk scarf that likely cost more than the entire catering budget. She moved with the kind of authority that makes security guards step aside without asking for an invitation. I walked to meet her. I did not hug her. We did not exchange pleasantries. I simply led her to the gift table where my brown paper bag still sat, surrounded by the mocking debris of the evening. "Show me," Eleanor said. I reached past a silver toaster and a crystal vase to grab the bag. I pulled the bottle out. The room was buzzing with the low hum of gossip, people wondering who this austere woman was, but I blocked them out. I handed the bottle to Eleanor. My hand was steady. It was the steadiness of someone handing over a murder weapon to a forensic analyst. Eleanor took it. She did not look at the label. She looked at the wax. She tilted the bottle to inspect the sediment. She ran her thumb over the lot code etched into the glass near the base. Her eyes narrowed, sharp and calculating. "It is the one," she said, her voice low. "Lot 404. She turned to a passing server, snapping her fingers once. The sound cracked through the nearby conversation. "You," Eleanor said, "go to the VIP room behind the kitchen. Tell the representative from Harborstone Cellars to come out here. Now." The server blinked, confused. I don't think I can." "Do not think," Eleanor said. "Just do it. Tell him it concerns the Romane Conti consignment." Gordon Whitaker appeared out of the crowd like a specter. He had seen Eleanor. He had seen the bottle. And for the first time all night, the arrogance was gone, replaced by a sheen of oily panic. "What is going on here?" Gordon demanded, though his voice cracked slightly. "Who is this woman, Madeline? I told you to stop making a scene. We are trying to—" "Mr. Whitaker," Eleanor said, cutting him off without even looking at him. "I suggest you remain silent, unless you want to explain to your guests why you are running a commercial auction during your daughter's engagement party." Gordon turned pale. "Now! Hold on. There is no need to make this a big thing." We can discuss this in my office. Just give me the bottle. He reached for it. Eleanor pulled it back. I don't think so, she said. At that moment, a man in a beige suit hurried out from the service corridor. He looked annoyed, holding a tablet computer. It was the Harborstone representative. He scanned the group, his eyes landing on the bottle in Eleanor's hand. He stopped dead. Is that? The rep started, adjusting his glasses. Is that the missing unit from Lot 404? It is, Eleanor said. Intact, unopened, and currently being held hostage on a gift table. Gordon stepped in, trying to physically block the rep's view. It is a misunderstanding. My son-in-law's sister brought it. It is just a coincidence. I was about to add it to the inventory. The rep ignored him. He stepped closer to me, looking from the bottle to my face. He looked at my cheap suit, my lack of jewelry, and then he looked at the bottle again. Miss, the rep said, we have been holding the transaction on the entire lot because this bottle was unaccounted for in the provenance registry. Can you confirm how you acquired it? The circle of guests around us had grown silent. My mother was watching, her mouth slightly open. Trevor looked terrified. Sloane was still holding her phone, but she was no longer smiling. They all waited for me to say I found it in a basement or that I bought it at a yard sale. They waited for the punchline. I bought it 3 years ago at the Geneva Futures auction, I said clearly. My name is Madeline Graves. You can check your registry. This bottle is registered to me. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a vacuum. Gordon stared at me. You own it. Yes, I said. I paid $15,000 for it, and I have the digital receipt on my phone if you need to see it. Darlene made a sound like she had been punched in the stomach. Trevor looked at me as if I had just spoken in a foreign language. They had spent a lifetime telling themselves I was the failure, the poor relation, the one who needed their charity. In one sentence, I had shattered the only story they knew how to tell. The Harborstone rep tapped furiously on his tablet. He looked up, his expression grim. The registration matches, he said. He turned to Gordon. Mr. Whitaker, this creates a significant legal problem. You attempted to consign a lot that included property you did not own. And since the lot numbers were sequential, this implies the entire provenance of your shipment is suspect. No, wait, Gordon stammered, sweat now visible on his forehead. It is a family matter. She gave it to me. I said, I brought it as a wedding gift, but considering it was mocked and rejected, I am rescinding the offer. The rep nodded. He turned to the club manager who was hovering nearby. Close the VIP room, the rep ordered. Suspend the transaction. We need to conduct a full audit of every bottle Mr. Whitaker has brought onto the premises tonight. Nothing leaves this building. The party was no longer a celebration. It was an investigation. And as the guests began to whisper and point, looking at Gordon with suspicion instead of admiration, I realized that I hadn't just ruined the mood. I had turned on the lights. My parents descended on me like vultures sensing a carcass, but their desperation was not for my soul. It was for the bank account standing behind me. Darlene grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my flesh through the fabric of my jacket, while Hank boxed me in from the other side. "What are you doing?" Darlene hissed, her voice vibrating with hysteria. "Are you trying to destroy your brother's life? Are you insane? I am just claiming what is mine," I said. Hank leaned in, his face red and sweating. "You are going to ruin this connection for us. Do you know what Gordon can do for Trevor, for all of us? Fix this, Madeline. Just fix it." I watched their eyes. They were screaming at me, but their gaze kept flickering over my shoulder toward Gordon Whitaker. They did not look at him with respect anymore. They looked at him the way a drowning man looks at a life raft that is rapidly losing air. They were terrified that their ticket to the upper class was about to be voided. Trevor pushed past our mother, his face twisted in a look I had not seen since he was a toddler denied a toy. He was trembling. "What do you want?" Trevor shouted, his voice cracking. "Is this about money? Do you want a payout? You have always been jealous of me. You couldn't stand that I was the one who made it. I don't want your money, Trevor," I said. "And I don't want his." I raised my phone. On the screen was the photo I had taken in the service corridor. The brightness was turned all the way up. I held it out so Gordon, the Harborstone representative, and my family could see it clearly. "This is the consignment checklist from the back room," I said. "It lists lot 404. It lists a $50,000 deposit paid by Gordon Whitaker. And it lists the bottle as being in his possession." Eleanor stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension like a scalpel. "This proves intent. It proves the chain of custody was falsified before the auction even began. In the world of high-end wine, that is not just an error. That is fraud." The word hung in the air, fraud. It was a dirty word in a room full of people who prided themselves on clean reputations. Gordon Whitaker's posture changed. The panic in his eyes hardened into something darker, something dangerous. He stepped closer to me, invading my personal space, lowering his voice so only I could hear the menace in it. "You need to be very careful, little girl," Gordon growled. "You do not know who you are dealing with. I can make your life very difficult. You think a little office job protects you." I did not flinch. I did not step back. I looked him straight in the eyes. "I know exactly who I am dealing with," I replied. "I am dealing with a man who thinks his reputation is armor, but armor only works if there are no cracks in it." Sloane, who had been watching the exchange with wide, terrified eyes, suddenly grabbed Trevor's arm. She tried to pull him away from the epicenter of the disaster, but her nerves got the better of her. "Trevor, let's just go," Sloane pleaded, her voice rising in pitch. "Dad said we just needed to get the bottle and it would be done. He said it was just a formality." The silence that followed was deafening. Sloane clamped a hand over her mouth, her eyes widening as she realized what she had just admitted. She had just confirmed the conspiracy. She had just confirmed that the engagement, the party, the invitation to me, it was all a mechanism to acquire the asset they needed to close their illegal deal. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The guests, who had previously been laughing at the girl with the brown paper bag, were now pulling out their phones. But they were not pointing them at me. They were pointing them at Gordon, at Sloane, and at my parents. The red recording lights blinked like tiny, judgmental eyes. I saw a woman in diamonds whispering to her husband while aiming her camera at Gordon. I saw the waiters stopping to watch. The narrative had flipped. I was no longer the embarrassing relative. I was the whistleblower. My mother looked around, realizing the audience had turned against her. She opened her mouth to speak, to spin a new lie, but no sound came out. I looked at Gordon, then at my parents, and finally at Trevor. I lowered my voice, delivering the final blow with absolute calm. "Do not worry," I said. "I have not released the information that will make you lose everything. Yet. I am just waiting for the right time." I slipped my phone back into my pocket. I had them. They were standing on a trap door, and I was the only one who knew where the lever was, and the most terrifying part for them was not knowing when I would pull it. The master of ceremonies, sweating under the stage lights, tried to wrestle the evening back on track. He tapped his microphone, the feedback screeching briefly before he called for everyone to raise their glasses for the impending proposal. My mother saw her window closing. She lunged for the gift table, her desperation making her clumsy. She grabbed the neck of my bottle, her knuckles white. "Let me open it," Darlene stammered, forcing a bright, terrified smile at the guests. "For the proper ceremony. It is bad luck not to toast with the family gift." She reached for a corkscrew lying on the silver platter. She was going to destroy the evidence right in front of the Harborstone representative. She was going to pour the proof down the drain and call it a celebration. I moved. I did not run, but I closed the distance with a speed that startled her. I placed my hand over hers on the bottle. I did not pull. I just held it firm. The cold glass was the only thing connecting us. "No, Mother," I said. I took the bottle from her shaking hand. I turned and walked up the 3 steps to the small stage. I took the microphone from the stunned MC. The feedback whined again, but this time, nobody covered their ears. They were too busy staring. "You all laughed because you thought this bottle was cheap," I said. My voice did not shake. It filled the room, bouncing off the glass walls and the expensive suits. I understand. It looks simple, but appearances are the only thing that matters in this room. Right? I nodded to the Harborstone representative. He cleared his throat and spoke loudly enough for the back row to hear. "That bottle is a Domaine de la Romanée Conti, vintage 2009, he announced. "It has a full provenance paper trail. The current market value is $15,000, and per our regulations, it can only be uncorked with the express permission of the registered owner." The silence that hit the room was physical. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the ventilation system. The laughter died instantly, as if someone had cut the power cord. I watched the faces in the crowd shift from amusement to shock. Darlene stood by the table. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at the guests, then at me, realizing that the humiliation she had tried to heap on me was now staining her own dress. "But the price is not the important thing," I said, pivoting to face Gordon Whittaker. "The important thing is why the Whittaker family needed this exact bottle tonight." Eleanor Price stepped forward. She held up a folder. "Harborstone Cellars is officially opening an internal investigation into the consignment chain managed by Mr. Whittaker," Eleanor stated, her voice iron. "The club management has confirmed that the VIP inventory room is now sealed. Police have been notified to preserve evidence of fraud and grand larceny." Gordon Whittaker slumped against the bar. He looked old. He looked like a man whose armor had just crumbled into dust. On the stage, Trevor stared at Sloane. He looked at his fiancée not with love, but with horror. He realized his marriage was not a union of families. It was a merger of liabilities. He had been sold to cover a debt. "You knew," Trevor whispered. Sloane burst into tears. It was not a dignified cry. It was the ugly, sobbing panic of a spoiled child who had been caught. "Dad said it would be fine. He said we just needed the bottle. Now everyone knows everything is ruined." Her confession rang through the hall, sealing the verdict. I lowered the microphone. I walked down the steps. The crowd parted for me, their phones recording every second of the Whittaker family's collapse. I stopped in front of my parents. Hank was gray. Darlene was trembling. "You laughed at me to please them." I said to them, my voice cold and clear, "You treated me like a prop to buy their approval. But tonight, I do not need anyone's favor. I just need the truth." I picked up the wrinkled 50-cent brown paper bag from the table. I slid the $15,000 bottle back inside. It made a soft rustling sound that seemed deafening in the quiet room. I turned my back on the engagement party. I walked toward the exit, clutching my bag. Behind me, the image of a perfect family dissolved into chaos, shouting, and the flashing lights of a scandal that would last much longer than the wine ever would have. I pushed open the doors and walked out into the cool night air, leaving them to pay the bill. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Drop a comment below and let me know where you are tuning in from. I love reading your theories and connecting with you guys. If you enjoyed this takedown, please smash that subscribe button for Victoria Revenge Stories, hit the like, and give us a hype so more people can hear the truth coming out. Catch you in the next one.